Hi Devendra, we'll just wait for 5 minutes.
Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar. Uh, Welcome to this Saturday afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining in today. We have a power-packed panel today where we'll be discussing fundraising, and I hope people attendees can have some takeaways from it, get their questions answered. So I'll start by introducing Maharashtra State Innovation Society. So we are the nodal agency under the Department of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of Maharashtra. We are implementing the startup policy of Maharashtra, and we have multiple initiatives under the startup policy, which was released in 2018. Uh, some of the events I can talk about very quickly is the Startup Week, where we give startups an opportunity to work with government, and we give work orders to 24 startups every year. We also have a fairly large incubation network. We are funding 17 incubators across the state. Uh, Recently, we have also launched a women entrepreneurship cell, which will take activities to promote entrepreneurship across the state. Uh, Under that women entrepreneurship cell, we are setting up a dedicated incubation center for women, and this will be at SNDT University in Mumbai. The soft launch for this incubator is on Monday. It will be inaugurated by our honorable minister. We are funding each incubator, total 17 in the state. We are funding 5 crores each to take up the development activities across the state. Uh, so there are more initiatives. I'll let everyone go to msins.in and check out our initiatives. But I'd like to thank Anisha and Kale from Let's Start for allowing us to host this website today. And welcome Anisha and Kale. I'll hand over to Anisha to introduce the panel and herself. Thank you, Anisha.
Thank you, Devendra. I was just asking, do you want to wait for a few minutes to allow others to join in? Okay. Thanks, Devendra. Hi, everybody. I'm hoping I'm audible now. I had earlier some problems. But good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for making it on the Saturday afternoon. We're excited to be here and hoping that we make this panel discussion worth your time on the Saturday afternoon. Before we dive into the topic, a bit about Lexstart. Uh, we we are probably India's one of the foremost law firms that focuses only on the early stage ecosystem. So we work only with startups and investors in the early stage ecosystem and help with everything relating to starting up to fundraising and their day-to-day legal and compliance requirements. Um, In fact, we have been ranked as top 10 law firms in the country by the number of deals we did last year. We did about 70 deals, of which 10 were by women-led startups. And so when MSINS reached out to us and said, let's do an event together, I thought, why not put together some of the really awesome women in our network and hear their journey of being an entrepreneur and investor. So that's where we are today. And just to introduce the panel, starting with Hena Mehta. She's the co-founder and CEO of Basis, a digital financial destination for women. Hena, it will be great to just hear from you about yourself and your journey for a few minutes, and then I'll introduce the rest of the panel.
Sure. Hi, Anisha. Hi, everyone. So I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. As Anisha mentioned, I'm Hena. I'm the co-founder of Basis. We're building India's first FinServe platform focused on women. Fairly early stage, just about a couple of years into the journey. So it's been incredible. Anisha, you and your team have been incredible partners as well. So thank you for all of that. Prior to Basis, I've worked in tech my entire life, in fintech specifically. Started my career in New York at Goldman Sachs, building software, moved into product management roles after that, decided India was too exciting of an opportunity to miss out on. So the FOMO brought me back to Bangalore, where I grew up. And I worked with, another fintech startup then called EasyTap, which is in the payment space. Decided it was a good time for me to get an MBA. So went back to the US for business school. And then returned to India post that to start building Basis. So returned to India twice now. Like I said, massive opportunity here. FOMO just brought me back, and it's been an incredible journey so far, and I'm excited to go into it over the next hour or so. Thank you for having me.
Next on the panel is Pallavi, who's the co-founder of ProcCap, a mission-driven inclusive financial technology firm. Pallavi, over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, first of all, thank you, Anisha, for having me here. It's a privilege and an opportunity to be sitting at the event hosted by you. We've been great partners from the very early stages. And I completely echo what Hena said. You've been very, very supportive throughout our fundraise journey. So you know how it's all been. We, as a company, we started, back in 2018. That's when we, really got our first round of funding from GrowX Ventures. And the idea for us, which started way back in 2017, was that we wanted to really find a way, me and my co-founder, who comes from Standard Chartered Bank. I used to be with IFC before setting up ProcCap. And the idea was very simply that we would wanted to see how we can tap into the massive opportunity and the challenge of financing the last mile retailer segment, which has been completely overlooked. So that's what we've been doing over the last 2.5 years. What we really do is we work with large corporates, Fortune 500 companies, and through them onboard their entire distribution channel. And in the process, are looking to reach out to this 15 million retailer base, routing over $1 trillion of transactions to really plug them into the formal financing ecosystem and help them, not only with access to credit, but also through software and payments and other digitization services. So that's what we've been doing. We've done over $125 million of financing, 0 NPA. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm really looking forward to share all I could about our fundraise journey on this panel.
Thank you, Pallavi. Excited to have you on board. The next on the panel is Rachna Gupta. She's the co-founder of Gynoveda, the world's first Ayurveda digital platform solving period problems. Rachna, over to you.
Hey, great to be here. Anisha, I'm going to say +1 to what Hena and Pallavi both spoke. I don't think for us at Gynoveda fundraising and you could have gone, it's almost synonymous to have you and fundraising for us at Gynoveda go together. So thank you for that fabulous support.
Thank you.
I actually would like to call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I think about 2 years back, if somebody had said that I would be a part of the founding team building the world's first femtech in the Ayurveda space, solving period problems, I don't think I would believe myself. But hey, that's what the panel is also all about, right? It's actually going out there and surprising our own selves to see what we can aspire for and what we can actually go out there and build. So that's pretty much how my foray into the entrepreneurial world has been. I think I'm giving birth to our second child with my husband, Vishal, and I both being co-founders. So we have a son in our teens and another baby, which is pretty much trying to come out of the terrible twos. So it's wonderful to be in this space, all for women taking charge of their health, both physical, menstrual, and emotional health. And yeah, I think, when we speak of entrepreneurship, I don't think anyone can get away without bringing the spotlight on how 2020 has been, especially for entrepreneurs and the fundraise scene. So hoping to discuss a lot of the tenacity and resilience that I'm sure each one of our stories is going to bring out in the panel.
Absolutely, Rachna. Thank you for that. Next on the panel is Shalini Chhabra. She's the managing partner India of a Silicon Valley-based fund called 3i Partners. She's also a seasoned banker and an angel investor. Over to you, Shalini.
Thank you so much, Anisha. Hi. So as Anisha mentioned, I've been a banker for 20 plus years, spent time in traditional large Indian commercial banks. I started my career with Kotak Mahindra, which was a little bit more entrepreneurial, I would say. It was still small then. It was still not yet a bank. Moved on to Citi, was with HDFC Bank for 15 plus years. Started my entrepreneurial journey about 2.5 years ago. Was an impact investor, and I'm supporting 3i Partners for their investments into India. It's absolutely lovely to be here with all of you fabulous women, and I would love to hear your stories and share some of mine.
Thank you, Shalini. Last but definitely not the least, because she's been a client, a friend, and a confidant for over a decade now, Karuna Jain, who's set up her own fund called NZ, which is a fund specializing in health, education, and environment. Over to you, Karuna.
Thank you, Anisha. So yes, I have been doing investing for about 15 years now. Early stage investing, impact investing, private equity investing in M&A. So I have seen the length and breadth of the transaction size. In my last role, I was leading India investing for Acumen. So invested across sectors, healthcare, education, agriculture, energy being the sectors that we focused on. I also led Acumen's healthcare investing globally. So yeah, I've spent a considerable amount of time in the investing space, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today because I think these are exciting times for women.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karuna. So, I mean, a lot has been spoken and written about gender disparity in funding by VCs. The question is how much of it is true, and that's why when I thought of putting together this panel, I thought of you lovely ladies who have gone through this experience, whether as entrepreneurs or as investors, and hence wanted to kind of hear about your experiences, your journey on fundraising. Are these biases that we create for ourselves, or do these biases actually exist? And before I kind of dive into the first question I had for the panel, just shout out to the attendees there. Thank you so much for being here. If you have questions, please post them on the message box and we will take them up as and when we can. So now, I read somewhere that women-led startups received just about 2.3% of VC funding in 2020. Now, when you look at that number on its own, it looks really small. But the first question that came to my mind when I read that was, is it because there weren't enough number of women-led startups that actually went out there to fundraise? Or is it that, there were like several of these, like there were millions of women-led startups that went out there to fundraise and could not fundraise, right? We don't know the percentage vis-a-vis the number of startups that actually approached investors for fundraising. But keeping aside that, my question to Karuna here is that you've been a investor, and now you are also fundraising for your own fund. What what is your reaction to this? Do you think that there are not enough number of women who are seeking funding, or is it that they are seeking funding but for various other factors are probably not successful in closing a funding opportunity?
So Anisha, like you mentioned, right, the skew is real. Pick up any list, Forbes rich list, top CEOs list, top funded startups list, right? You just don't see enough women. That's the reality. And less than 10% of all businesses in India are women owned. That's the reality we are all living in, right? But I think there's a huge opportunity to correct that skew at a startup level. Because at a seed level, when an investor is investing, and I'm speaking for myself and a lot of investors I interact with, they're not saying, I will not invest in this business because this is led by a woman. What they're looking for is some characteristics in an entrepreneur. They need ambition, they need confidence, they need risk-taking ability. As long as you meet those criteria, you will get funding, right? You stand an equal chance to get funding. The question, as you asked, is, are we seeing enough women entrepreneurs? That's the reality. We're not seeing enough women entrepreneurs. And why is that? I can keep going down. There are less number of women in engineering colleges. 20% of premier engineering college students are women. And keep going down further, it comes down to the patriarchal society we live in, right? That's changing. I'm confident we'll not have this conversation 10 years down the line. But today, there are biases that women are fighting, right? And I think startups actually present a great opportunity. And investors are all for investing in women's startups.
Sure. Thank you, Karuna. So you made a very interesting point, right? It could be lack of confidence, it could be lack of risk-taking appetite. So, we have entrepreneurs on this panel. So my question here is to Hina. Hina, what are your thoughts on what Karuna just said, right? Do you think that we as women lack confidence and lack the risk-taking appetite, and hence probably these numbers are skewed?
So here are some of my thoughts, right? I think it's probably a combination of all of that, right? So, well, to start off with, not every business is VC fundable or needs VC funding, right? So the fact that whatever 2-3% of VC funding went to women, maybe women are raising debt, maybe they're bootstrapping, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not getting the financing or the opportunities that men may get. Two, I would say is, there's definitely, or not definitely, I can't say this for sure, but there's probably a skew even in the number of women start may be seen as, a massive risk. Why take it? I mean, the stereotype typically is that women prefer stability and things like that. However, as we're building bases and we talk to women about a different kind of investing, this is personal finance investing, we've seen that while women might be seen as more risk averse, they're actually more risk aware. So once they kind of know a little bit more and, get their feet wet and gain that confidence, that risk taking ability may look a little different, but that's a story for another day. And the third thing I'd say is, there are certain biases, right? So this 2020 number, what I also think happened is that, it was a year where things were so crazy and so uncertain. And the VC world is, whether we like it or not, is pretty well male dominated, right? I don't know what the numbers are, but it's something in the 90+% of venture investors are male. And so part of their job is to de-risk. And how do you de-risk? You go to, you invest in people or in companies you're familiar with. And that may happen to be people who look like you, people who, have similar experiences to you. And then that's probably also what led to this slightly lower risk-taking appetite from the VC side as well, right? So those would be my, guesses or sort of thoughts on that. And last point here, I definitely think there is, and this is not across all women, I think on average, there is a confidence gap, right? Like I went through this, you go through the imposter syndrome. I've been told to be more aggressive in pitches, to paint, it is a big vision that we're setting out to do, but how we talk about it, just being like audacious, right? In terms of how you pitch your business. I struggle with that sometimes. I'm like, I don't know what it is. Maybe we were like, conditioned to be very diligent, say things as they are. So sometimes I have to like push myself, get out of that comfort zone, put on my sales hat, and really kind of paint this audacious vision, which I think a lot of men do more naturally. In fact, in one of the pitches I was actually asked by the VC saying, how would, and he named a male entrepreneur we both knew in common, how would X pitch this, right? Pitch it to me like how he would. And I was just stunned, right? And I was like, well, I don't know. But so I think there is that element of confidence, how we, how we need to boast, we need to brag, we need to like paint that audacious vision. And I think as women, we might have been conditioned to not, right? Like boasting is bad, be modest, be humble. And so I think that may also be lending to some of these numbers.
Thank you, Hena. Rachna, I could see you nodding your head to a lot of things that Hena was saying. Do you want to just jump in here?
Completely. I think sounds such familiar territory, and totally second what Hena said, especially the fact, and she brought out a very pertinent point about women not being as audacious enough as we should. And I agree that some part of it, I think, stems from our conditioning. Some part of it stems even from our own assessment of how well we can do out there, right? And, personally, I experienced this at very close quarters. So in 2019, when Vishal and I were pitching for Gynoveda, and I know that it's an husband-wife and I was always told every time that, I did not, or rather I faced a rejection and came back, I was told that maybe you should pitch your idea to women investors. And my question, and I know Shalini is laughing at that right now, but I was like, first and foremost, where are the women investors, right? And the second thing is, it's all about understanding the business potential and what problem are we solving. And I'm extremely thankful and grateful that in this journey, we found a mainstream VC. And I'm going on record to say this, that it's an all-male team that from the word go totally believed in what we were building. It's a space completely intrinsic to what we women go through because we solve period problems. So I'm talking about PCOD, PCOS, heavy bleeding, vaginal discharge. So terms which can make a lot of even women squirm. But to be in a room full of men and bringing out that whole narrative of how Gynoveda is solving period problems, I think, was a very, very refreshing take from what we tend to see otherwise. So just to sum it up, I think, Anisha, my personal take on this and my 2 cents is, it all starts with us. If we have the clarity, we are extremely confident and bullish about what we believe in, then I think it's just a matter of going out there and asking what we deserve. I think as women, we tend to fall a little short of asking what we truly deserve. But the universe is waiting out there to conspire and give it to us. So I think it's just a matter of going out there and asking what we truly believe in.
Thank you, Rachna. Shalini, you've been an angel investor, now VC. You've heard the founders talk about their view. What is your reaction to that?
Well, actually, I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. I find okay. So let me give you some perspective. I think out of all the pitches, out of every 20 pitches, I may see one with a woman co-founder. if I see 50 pitches, I will see one with an all-woman team. And I say this with saying that, our first investment has been in a women founder only investment. So I'm absolutely delighted to say that. But it is true. I think women in the startup ecosystem are lower. When they are there, they tend to bootstrap more. They tend to push themselves more. They tend to have more plan Bs. They tend to scale down plans to be risk averse. They don't tend to go all out. They are at some level not that keen to bring in external funding and have external monitoring, external supervision, having to deal with a whole lot of men asking all kinds of questions. And what was said earlier, the VC industry is 90% men, absolutely true. So I just, my perspective is just this much, and it's something that I've seen earlier as well. Within banking, I would see women pushing themselves less, asking for less, being less, So I all I say to women, and I've heard this all my life, you're too aggressive. And I say this to all the women I meet, be aggressive, be that woman, right? It's your right. Anyone who tells you don't be aggressive is telling you to short sell yourself. Don't do it.
Thank you, Shalini. Pallavi, you fundraised. You are in a financial service business. You fundraised from the likes of Sequoia, etc. And you're also in the business of giving out financing, right? What is your reaction to this entire conversation around women being probably more risk averse or risk aware? Do you think that is something that holds us back, and hence the whole dismal number of funding going into women-led startups?
So, Anisha, I would start with a little bit light on the biases that we are talking about. And I think Karuna rightly said it, we are coming out of a patriarchal society. And, there's a lot of statistic around, not only in the VC industry, if you look at the TV cartoon characters, right? Just less than 13% of them are, female characters, the non-human ones are female characters. If we look at media, we look at bank notes, there's only males there, we don't see any women leaders. We look at statues, we look at, the screen time analysis of, it's been done by a very interesting organization in terms of, you have a lot of female protagonist movies, but also overall, if you look at the screen time of male versus female, there is a 3x more, even, if we compare with female-led movies. So in every industry, we are seeing that, in politics, in workspaces, half of the gender population in the globally is women, and has been largely ignored when you talk about, the moment you see human being, it's a man, right? So man is universal and woman is a deviation, because it's an entrepreneur. We hear women entrepreneur all the time. There's always female, woman, lady attached to that we do. So I think that needs to change, so that and I think the caregiving, the mother, it's always those roles are always predefined as women, and that's also changing. A lot of men are coming out and sharing responsibilities. Women are going out there, starting companies, raising funds. So a lot of generation, we look at our parents' generation, they did not have even these opportunities to talk about, right? So I think things are changing, and like someone just said, like 10 years later, we may not be having these discussions. But at this point, I think the responsibility is on us to take forward this. And, VC industry, 93%, 90%, or whatever that number is, dominated by men, is leading to, a bit of that bias coming, because you're, like Hina said, you're kind of looking at similar people, that familiarity helps. We are sitting here in a female panel. We are more comfortable, maybe, there's some bias here as well. So it's not only men who are prone to biases. But having said that, in our fundraise journey, I think we've met some wonderful people. We've seen all kinds of biases, not only, biases towards me as a woman, but, like like married biases, right? It's a couple running a company, so those biases exist. So and we've seen also women having biases, women VCs having those. So I think for us as women entrepreneurs trying to do things and really, what you call it, breaking the proverbial glass ceiling and all of that, I think it's important that we don't let them into our skin, right? It just should be washed out of, from the face of it, and don't really, question ourselves on it, just kind of keep going. And there is some element of truth. So what I like to do is after every such event, I like to introspect. And I see that this is something that I need to work upon, right? Maybe I wasn't confident enough today, right? So come back and take notes and work towards it. Be more confident next time, be more number driven next time, maybe if required, be more audacious next time, So it's a journey. You will keep on trying that, learning and growing. And I think that's a part of life. And we are seeing the numbers have improved in terms of women getting funding. I'm sure, a decade from now, this will be a 50-50 ratio, if not more. So yeah, I think we are going to start the change for sure.
Absolutely. Karuna, you've seen enough number of pitches. Do you think women pitches, like pitches by women or women-led startups, are any different? Maybe they're not number-driven, or are they different, like what Henna and Pallavi were saying? Do you see any difference?
So I think, Anisha, where I'm sitting today, right, I don't think women-led pitches are any different. I think it's about the ask, right? I think I need this money, I deserve this money. The ask is not maybe as confident always, right? But mostly I think right now we are seeing a great crop of women who are aggressive, who know what they want to do, right? But if I dial back a few years ago, right, women maybe were not very comfortable dealing with numbers. Women were great storytellers, had great ability to connect with grassroots women, didn't have an ability to translate that into numbers. But that's not happening today, right? I think now women have gotten very comfortable with what they're doing. They're more confident in terms of knowing what they want to achieve. Can they be more aggressive? Maybe yes. But again, I wouldn't want to stereotype sitting here, right? Because that's the problem we've been facing. We have to break these stereotypes. So I don't want to stereotype, but I also do agree, right? 90% of investors are male. I think investing is about getting rid of your biases. So while I hear you that there are people who have biases, right? There are also investors who are trying to fight those biases. So confident that this is going to change. The skew is changing.
Absolutely. So there's a question someone from the audience has asked, right? That there's an enormous gender gap in venture capital funding, and this gap will narrow as more women become VCs. Do you agree?
Not necessarily. The way I see it, there are commercial investors. Commercial investors will invest in companies that make them money. Exactly. Wherever that money comes from, whoever is leading the company, as long as they're confident this company can make them money, they'll invest in those. But there are also pools of capital today which support women, right? And that is needed, because the reality is we have been disadvantaged. Women have been disadvantaged because of a societal bias or conditioning. And there are pools of capital, whether it be women-focused, gender lens investing funds, whether it be impact investors. There are different pools of capital which are out there to support women. Women will have to figure out ways to get to them. And yes, they will. So there is definitely an increased interest in women-led startups and investing to skew that.
Yeah, but the question is, and the question is, Karuna, to you and Shalini both, right? As investors, okay, I understand that, okay, there were more women VCs. You're saying that that whole gap could reduce. But my question to both of you is that just because you are women VCs, are you going to be more biased towards startups that are led by women?
I set up a fund, right? And we are a women-led fund. The fund is 3 women. The founding partners are 3 women. We don't do gender lens investing. We will invest in startups that we believe will do well, are promising in health, education, and environment sectors. But that's about it. We ended up investing, 2 of the 5 startups we invested in have women entrepreneurs. We're extremely proud of working with them. They might be our winners, but we think we are here to, I don't think, at least I believe that we should see, there are funds which are very focused on gender lens, right? We are a commercial fund, so I can't take the stand that I will only invest in women-led startups, because then I'm limiting the total universe of companies that I'm looking at.
Right. Yeah.
So if I may chip in here. So there's a recent HBR article I was reading, which surveyed the US and not India. But it basically was saying, and this was interesting to me, that women VCs are twice as likely to invest in businesses led by women entrepreneurs. It doesn't move the needle that much. Let's not forget that we are starting at 2.3% and we double it, so it's still 4.6. I don't think it's about gender lens investing either. So I completely agree with Karuna there. It is, I think, more about the ability to communicate to somebody who understands so many of the ideas that sometimes, men talk to each other and it makes no sense to women. It happens the other way around as well. Sometimes women talk to each other and they have fabulous business ideas, but men don't get it. And it will make a difference. I think at some level also, it is not to say that one does gender-led investing, but if I find 2 equally fabulous ideas, I would promote the woman-led one. And why not? There is like millennia of inequality that we have to cover up for. So, a positive bias is a good thing. I think we need it. We all need it. It is not to say that if a man promoted enterprise is better, one should go for the women promoted one. But if 2 are equally good, why not? But there is let me just add to that, and this is interesting. The same HBR article actually quoted saying that actually from a commercial perspective, everyone should invest in women-led enterprises. And let me quote this data here. They said that women-led enterprises tend to deliver higher revenue, twice as much as per invested dollar. And that's a fabulous outcome for women VCs. Women also tend to underpromise and overdeliver, which is a fabulous outcome. But because if you're budgeting for X and you get 2X, which investor doesn't want that?
Absolutely.
Sorry, please go ahead, Amita.
No. I think those are very, very good inputs. Something you said kind of got me thinking about this whole thing, right? Like there are men talk to men and hang out more with men. So there are some businesses probably they don't understand, right? And we have here, on the panel, Henna and Rachna, whose businesses are more focused towards women, right? So the question to you is, and although like Rachna, you said that you fundraised from male only VC, right? What has been your experience of trying to explain your business model, which is for business model is for women only? So did you face the challenge of trying to convince VCs to invest? What was your experience like?
So Anisha, you know it, we've already had lots of conversations around it, but I have an actually very heartening story to share. And that's the fact, like I said, right from the first pitch that I made to an all-male investor, until now, it's been a little over 15 months. And the journey has been nothing but beyond fabulous. And I think it goes back to the fundamental about what is the VC's investment thesis. If the thesis is centered around the idea and the propensity of that idea to get amplified and reach X percentage of men, women, or the general population. But I think the power of the idea supported then by, I think, the potential of the founders. I personally think that these are the two things which, in my interaction with our investor, and honestly, I hate to call them investors, I actually refer to them as partners. And I think one thing that we've been very lucky and very grateful for is to find the right partners who help us remain true to what we set out to build. And that's something that I've seen with, and again, to give credit to the male investors, that's something that I've seen with a lot of them. The focus is on how big is your idea, how many lives are you impacting. I didn't see anybody in the room squirm when I was talking a lot of intricacies around menstruation and the kind of problems that we women go through, right? And these are, some of them are very intimate details that I had to discuss with them, because that's precisely what our business is all about. But I think it's all about what, like I said, their value system is. What is it that they believed in? And which is why I honestly never felt uncomfortable even for a second discussing about it. I was told that, most of them will never get it. I was told that a lot of them will squirm in their chairs when you talk menstruation, and they won't even look at you in the eye. And I'm not going to lie here that some of them did. And that's the time when, I also possibly thought that maybe a woman investor will get it. But, there are two sides of the same of the coin, right? And somebody brought it out here that men talking to men, women may not get it, or vice versa. I think it's the same. If you believe in what you're doing is good, and you believe in the fact that your business is going to pan out the way you have envisioned it as founders, then I think men or women, you will find the right partners. And so I don't think the focus should be on the gender. As entrepreneurs, when you're going out there and if you're looking for a partner to onboard you, I think the focus should be on what will that partner enable you to achieve, and will the partner let you stay true to your core, which I think is extremely important. I think personally for me, my learning is anybody who invests in you and your ability to bring out that idea to fruition is the one that you should go ahead with.
If I could chime in here. So my experience was slightly different. But what I do echo with Rachna is, yeah, it is a partnership. There is that like founder investor fit that people tend to underestimate, right? This is not just capital. This is a person you'll be interacting with a lot through ups and downs. So it's important to make sure there's that comfort level. Is this someone you'd be okay calling at like midnight saying you're in a crisis, right? Like that's like a good check to do when you're in these pitches and in these meetings. For us though, and I think it's because it's one of the, I guess, non-obvious ones. So it's women-focused financial services, how women make financial decisions, how their financial lives play out, et cetera, et cetera. So I got asked initially, at least, and it's been very different since when I started just 2 years ago to, rounds of conversations that we're having now. I mean, it's great, it's evolved, but in the very first time we went out to pitch this, it's like, why is there a need for this, right? Like, what is so, like, why? I mean, maybe women are not investing in the stock markets or mutual funds as much because they don't want to, or they don't need to, or, just those very, I think, tone deaf statements, and you can't, blame them either, right? This is not something that's easy to relate to unless you're going through it. I started based off of my own pain point. I was 28, 29, hadn't made a single proper investment after earning for a good 7+ years, right? And to me, that I was like, am I, is this abnormal? Is this unusual? Why was I left out? But I realized most women, at least urban Indian women, in a similar, in a similar boat, were kind of struggling with similar things, right? So I think for me, and there was far and few female investors who I had also spoken to at the time, but it was one of those things like women just got, whether it was, well, potential customers we were speaking to at the time or investors, there was less of a need to describe why this is needed. It's more, the conversation became more of like, how are you solving for this? Yes, this is a gap. Yes, these are pain points, but then let's talk about the solution, right? With some of the men, we had to kind of describe why this even needs to exist. And so I think that was our challenge. And I think finding investors is really about finding the believers, right? It's very hard to convince the non-believers. So seek out people who sort of, like I said, already believe this should exist and there's a gap and there's a big market, and then really work with you and are evaluating you based on your solution, your team, if you have metrics, revenue, whatever that is, right? So I think that would be my, those would be my thoughts on this point. So I do think more women investors will lead to more, not only women-led companies being invested in, but also women-focused solutions that are being built.
No, thank you, Hina, but you make a very good point, and that's something that the investors on this panel also made. See, ultimately, it's about the size of the market, how much money will I make, right? I mean, ultimately, it boils down to that, right? If you see that promise being made and the capability being made, capability and the business model kind of syncing up, it doesn't matter who you are and what's your gender, right? So I think that's a very, very valid point. There's a lot of questions coming in, and I know we are running out of time. I thought 1 hour would be too long, and now I realize it's not enough. There are a few questions that have come in, and I'm just going to pose it to all of you, and please feel free to answer. The first question is, are there particular sectors wherein investors tend to invest more if it is founded by a woman entrepreneur? Rather, are there comfort sectors for which women are more keen to start up? Anyone wanting to respond to that?
So let me give you my experience. My experience is that women tend to be, they're more in women-centric problems. And I would love for it to be not the case. I want to see, I mean, personally, I want to see women breaking barriers in tech, in, in e-commerce, in what have you, housing, livelihood, education, and so on and so forth. But there exists a need for women-centric solutions, which cannot be offered by men because men don't understand the space. I mean, improving the quality of the bra, how's a man ever going to understand? Right? So, period problems. Men try to understand, but I don't know. And obviously other panelists have had different experiences, so I'll bow to their experience. But I find
Rachna convinced them.
I know, she must have been absolutely amazing to convince a man that their period problems deserve attention. So I can vouch for the fact that she's an absolutely fabulous salesperson.
I think the credit goes to them more than what I had to convince. I think it's just to build upon what you said, Shalini, right? So there is fintech, which is, again, we've discussed it, and Pallavi brought out some of the pertinent points there. And what we were trying to do, or what we are trying to do rather, is femtech. It's feminine technology. And a lot of investment in United States and in Europe has happened in this space. So I think some of the learnings, when you see internationally or across the globe, femtech is turning out to be a huge industry in itself. And somewhere I think it's also about being at the right place at the right time. So when you're just catching up with the wave and you happen to be a femtech company, I think you also tend to garner a lot of attention. So I think credit goes to more the men being on the other side rather than I being a good saleswoman. But thank you for that compliment.
So the one specific space globally which might have been a decade ago, man dominated. But I find interestingly very female dominated today. Goes back to our two Nobel Prize winners in genetic engineering. And I would love to see women in genetic engineering doing deep tech stuff today.
Yeah, we haven't seen those many in India. You're right. Yeah. There's another question from the audience. Maybe Pallavi, do you want to answer this? It says, I would like to know what steps should female members looking for startups take for raising funds? What precautions should be taken in writing proposals? So it's basically how to pitch. Basically.
Yeah, I think the first rule of thumb is just be shameless. I think just be shameless with your idea, with your pitching. Just go about, doing and, believing in what you're doing. You just have to demonstrate, of course, you have to talk sense. At the same time, demonstrate that how big can your idea be? And, I think it all comes from if you have that conviction. And if you're doing something in and out, I think it speaks, right? That passion will automatically come. And if not one investor, somebody else will take notice, right? Second thing is be smart, right? I feel that, sometimes we are just kind of fighting, right? I mean, there's this very interesting thing that we keep asking, how many of you love, to recognize yourself as fighters. So we are like, we just love fights, and therefore fights is what keeps coming to you. And it's, it's important that we don't really tend to be fighters, and we tend to be more peaceful and just try to do our thing right. And I think at some point you will see that, because I think the amount of energy that's going to go wasted in just fighting this male dominated VC industry, this is not happening. It's taking away a lot of your energy. So I think conserving that energy is very important, and doing what you're, I think putting that energy back to your business, building it day by day, building more traction, building more scale, demonstrating, pitching, taking feedback from every pitch. And, many times we just think that, we are pitching it right, but somebody is not getting it, maybe, but with every pitch, there's a learning, proving it the next time. And I think that's what has really helped us. Investors have been really generous with their advice. The ones who haven't invested have been super generous, because they made us learn, what more we need to do. And then finally we see that, we are now in the fundraise process again. And it's been, we are enjoying the process now, I think, after doing all of that. So I think in your proposal, it's very important to call out how you're going to scale it up, how you're going to make it $1 billion, kind of an investment, and give super normal exits to investors. So just thinking about how large can this be, and articulating it. And of course, at the back, continuing to build and demonstrate scale in your business, attracting the right talent. So I think it's a journey, and it's a constantly evolving process for all of us.
Thank you, Pallavi.
And I wanted to add a quick thing there. Sorry. So I think a couple of things from my side. One is just practice, right? With each pitch you do, you get better and better. You're not going to kind of go into this, on D-Day without practicing, right? And then two, absolutely to what Pallavi said, paint that audacious vision. I mean, nobody can predict the future, right? We might as well say it's going to be X, and then hopefully prove out that point, but paint that big vision. In fact, another woman founder recently, it was a joke. It's like, a way to a man's heart is through his stomach, a way to a VC's heart is through TAM, right? Like, paint that big total addressable market. It's what works, right? Like, everyone wants to see how big this could be. No one knows if it's going to play out. They don't know, you don't know, but the goal is that there is a path to that vision. Be resilient. I mean, there will be more no's than yeses. It's just, I mean, the process is designed that way. Out of 50, 60, 70 conversations you have, you really only need those 1 or 2 or 3 yeses. So you will have more no's. Don't let it kind of get to you. Be resilient, kind of move on from it. To Pallavi's point, learn from that no, move on to the next one. And so, yeah, those would be my thing. And one last point, I was told from the very beginning, like, go into these meetings knowing that you know more about your business than the investor, right? It's just natural. You live this day in and day out, you're breathing this. So don't go into it thinking like, I don't know enough, etc. You're the expert of your business. And so I think that mindset also really helps with confidence and painting that big vision.
Thank you, Hina. Sorry, Karuna, were you trying to say something?
Yes, I was, and Hina has covered everything that I was going to add, right? So honestly, when Rachna mentioned femtech, right, it's true. Femtech is booming today. And why is it booming? Not that some men have developed love for women-owned businesses or businesses solving women's problems, right? There are just larger number of women who become digital transactors. There are larger number of women who are okay seeking healthcare online. In fact, women are more likely to seek healthcare online than men are. So it makes commercial sense to invest in digital women's health businesses. And that's what we ended up doing. I wrote an article on this topic, right? So that's the point. Femtech has attracted $145 million in India in 4 years between 2014 and 18, globally $3 billion, right? And there are men who are starting up businesses. Sirona, Nua, they're all men who have started businesses which give you sanitary napkins, menstrual pain relievers. So it's about being clear about what is the problem you're solving, how large is the problem, and is your solution real, right? Is your solution something that customers will pay for, come back to again and again? That's what investors need to hear at the seed stage.
Thank you. I mean, Hina and Karuna, you have actually like summarized the need for a perfect pitch and what it should have. I know we are running out of time. So any parting thoughts from the panel?
Yeah, I would like to add something. I think, Shalini was earlier highlighting, some numbers and the returns on investment on female-led enterprises. So I think there's a BCG study that was done which showed that for every dollar that you spent in female-led enterprises, there's a 78 cents of return versus men, it's 31 cents. So, and the other interesting study has been that if you have more participation of women as investors, they are making better investment decisions. So in terms of your exit, so 10x better exits and 15% more profitable investments. So there is a case for having more women investors and more women entrepreneurs, and women investing in these women entrepreneurs is going to multiply the numbers significantly, which we all understand so well. Yeah.
Thank you. Shalini, Rachna, any parting thoughts?
I would just love to say that I totally resonate those thoughts, and I would tell every women investor to be out there and trust your gut. Finally, it all comes down to what you feel. Trust your judgment, and I would tell every entrepreneur out there: ask for more, be more confident. You deserve it.
Absolutely.
I just have one line to say. I think apna time aa gaya. And
apna hamesha se tha.
Exactly. But right now, I think it's for everyone to say it loud and clear, and not just in whispering tones, because the future is female. And this is not a sales pitch for Gynoveda, but literally, you see around, I think there's some very, very interesting stuff being done across the world, whether it's in a VC world or whether it's in a bootstrapped world. But women are actually doing some very interesting stuff. And I think as long as those narratives come out, and there are communities and conversations like this, Anisha, which you are doing with, this ecosystem, and the more that gets amplified, I'm sure it's going to be, very soon, the conversations are going to be different. And I hope that we can be the strongest cheerleaders for other women to step into this arena. And you're going to have plenty of business coming to you as well.
Thank you. No, absolutely. Before I wrap up, there was a very interesting question that's asked, and while is interesting, so we'll take this last question before we wrap up. The question is: will age be a factor while pitching to VCs when it comes to women? Will they even take us seriously?
Okay, I think age is a factor. I don't think age is a factor, regardless of gender. I will talk about myself personally, and I like to see some level of experience. The reason I like to see some level of experience is that, I know that the person has the ability to, has learned to fail, get up, walk, and run again, right? Failure is the path to success. And somebody who is very, very young may obviously have the potential to do something completely outsized, but the likelihood is extremely low. However, for someone who has the experience of having failed and gotten up, having failed and tried, failed and tried, failed and tried, tried and tried and tried again, that's certainly the path to success.
Yeah, so it's basically experience. I mean, and we've seen some startups like Nykaa, etc., started by ladies, very, very experienced ladies, and they have been a success. But does anybody else has any view around if age would be a factor when fundraising for a woman?
I don't think it's a factor, Anisha, but whether it be men or women, right? We have different responsibilities at different stages of our life. And if I have a founder canceling on me 5 times saying, oh, I had an emergency at home, I would definitely want to figure out, is this a one-off or is this a consistent pattern? And how does this impact the person's ability to give his or her 100% to the business, right? Because that's what we expect. So age is not a factor, but yeah, we want to ensure that there is long-term commitment to what they're doing.
Yeah, I think this one might be more also in the entrepreneur's head, right? Like this is one of those biases. Like if I'm at the age where I may have a child, then how can I do justice to both my business and the kid? I mean, bottom line is you figure it out. I think we're lucky to see so many role models now where women are doing both. I think, yes, we do have the stage in our lives where we may, there's only so much time we have to have kids, and that may also be the time we have the energies to build businesses, whatever it may be. I think it's more in our head. You want to do it, you have a vision, you're passionate about something, just go ahead and do it. And I think everything else you will figure out.
No, absolutely. Agree with that. I mean, I think we as women are supposed to be great at multitasking. So I'm sure we'll take care of it all. I know I keep saying this will be the last question, but sorry, there's so many questions coming up and I really don't want to disappoint people. But okay, there's this question. I have 3 to 4 business ideas. How to decide which idea to pursue? Always have a fear of idea being stolen or copied. How to overcome this? Okay, so this is a very common problem and concern that we hear a lot of promoters come up with, right? What happens if I share an idea? Will someone steal it, right? And we have entrepreneurs, we have investors. Would love to hear your views on this.
I would like to add here, trust me, no one can steal your idea. Please go and pitch. We thought so initially. You're talking to VCs, they have invested in similar firms, you're sharing with your friends. Unless you share, you don't know whether it will work, it won't work. And honestly, I feel that when what you can do, the way you will execute that idea is what matters. Everybody has ideas these days. So I think don't refrain yourself from sharing your idea in all its entirety. Your business itself, the idea that you have now will not stay the same. Your business is going to pivot. Things are going to evolve when you actually implement. So I think that's something which, a lot of people I discuss with, I always encourage them to go and pay as much as you can and share your idea more widely, because that's when you will be open to getting feedback and learning and really, the way you can execute it, no one else can do that. So yeah, don't get those fears get onto your head.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I think ideas are cheap. the devil is in the execution. So even if someone steals your idea, in some ways it's a validation. Great, it is a huge market. Maybe, someone else is doing it. They've identified it. That's, validating that you are operating in a lucrative market. And two, there's no guarantee that they'll be able to execute as well as you. And I think the second part of the question is how to decide which idea to pursue. I think here is run experiments, right? Not just surveys asking people in theory what they may like, what they may pay for, things like that, but actually doing whatever you can in terms of seeing, those results. I think the Dunzo example here is what everyone quotes. The founder had started off as a WhatsApp service, right? Like, you tell me what you want delivered through WhatsApp. And then I think he himself did some of those orders, etc. And then it became, a full-blown product and a business after that. So I think run real experiments, see what clicks, and then don't be afraid that someone else will steal it, because you might have better execution skills.
Hey, sorry, Shalini, were you saying something? Were you adding to that?
No, I think Hina covered whatever I was going to say. Ideas are cheap. The devil's in the execution. That's one. And so, that's key. Nobody can do that. Second, I think validating ideas, just go ahead and do it. As you roll a product out into the market, as you roll a service out into the market, the feedback is what will tell you where you need to change and what will be successful and what will not work. You will not know it until you do it.
Absolutely. This has been great. Thank you, ladies. There's just so many insightful takeaways from this. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences. If I were to just summarize, right? I heard you all say we are great at multitasking. We are resilient. We end up making more money. We end up delivering more than we promise. And yeah, we are understated, but one shouldn't see that as a sign of weakness. It's okay. We'll try and be more boastful, but today we are understated, and that's fine. As long as we have a great business model, we'll get there. So thank you so much. This has been really great. Thank you for making the time. Thanks, Atan. And happy Women's Day. Although I would like to say that every day is Women's Day for us. So yeah, yes. More power to us.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Anisha.
Thank you, Anisha.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
All of you. Thanks much.